Yep, check, 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 check. Tap, 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 tap.
May I go to the bathroom?
Yeah. Yes. We're not on recording. I should have hit on record. Okay. Hey now, and how's it? Welcome in to the Booker Corrigan Show here on YouTube. Thrilled to have you making us part of your sports viewing day. A lot of options out there. We try to bring you the best content. We got Matt Stover coming up in a little while. We got two guys who are going to be finalists for the Tuaraton Award. Mikey Sowers from Princeton, Grant Ament from Penn State. Both attackmen, both amazing collegiate lacrosse players. But now we have a real treat for you. Really excited to have the MedStar Coaches Hotline. Two gentlemen who played at Syracuse together. They grew up in British Columbia, played lacrosse. Tom Marechek, also an excellent soccer player in his day. But we got Tommy Marechek and Gary Gait, the original number 22 in Syracuse lacrosse history. They will be on the MedStar Coaches Hotline. Please feel free to put comments in there. Please feel free to tweet this out to your friends because this is going to be a great segment, and it's going to start right now. I'm going to dial up my main man, Tommy, just because he and I coached together for a long time. We're going to get him on the call on the MedStar Coaches Hotline. Hello, Tommy. This is Booker. You are live on the Booker Corrigan Show. How's things, my good friend?
Booker, everything is great, my bud. Definitely a little warm down here. 84 right now.
Nice, Tommy, the director of lacrosse at IMG. Now, hold on one second, Tommy. Excuse me.
Okay.
Excuse me, Hollywood. I'm going to add my man Gary Gump into the call. One of my absolute favorites. Let's go contacts. Gary Gait. There he is. We are calling him mobile. Tommy's on hold right now.
Hello.
Hi, Gary. You're live on the Booker Corrigan Show, and in the background, you could probably hear your main man, Tommy Hollywood Marechek.
Gator. Gary. Hello?
Gary, can you hear him?
Gary.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Nice.
We got some great players on the line. It's an absolute treat for me. Between the three of us, we scored hundreds of goals and we won many national championships. And of course, the two of those could lay claim to all those accolades themselves. I'm just going to lump myself in because I saw them do a lot of that. Guys, let's get right to it because you guys have so much more valuable input than I do. Gary, what is your best memory from the 1989 national championship game against Johns Hopkins?
You know my fondest memory?
Yeah.
That was easy. Besides winning the national championship, it was, timeout at the end of the game. Coach tells me to take the ball, and I take the ball. Petros covered me, and Petro takes the ball back. That's the greatest memory I have of that game.
That is classic. That's humility. No other player in the world would probably pick a moment where he got stripped. Although, let's be honest, Dave Petramala was as good as you could get defensively. What was it like to go against him over and over and over in your career?
There's a reason he's a great coach and was an amazing player, and he had incredible drive, tenacity. He wanted to win every time he stepped on the field, and he played as hard as he could every second he was on that field. And it was tough, He was a good matchup for me, being a lefty, and Dave being a lefty. The way he played me, I think, was so smart. He didn't have to. It was tough to lean on his stick and take his stick away. And that's what I like to do on a lot of players is when you lean into a righty, it takes their ability to make checks away. But, when you lean against him, he used his forearm more, he used his legs, and it always kept his stick free when you drove against him. So, that's kind of one of the keys I think he always had in our matchup. But just incredible competitor.
Incredible competitor, to say the least. Tommy, on a more fun level, what are some of the best on-field stories or plays that all you Syracuse guys talk about when you get together in a group of 5 or more?
I think we talk about embracing the championships that we won. Very exciting. Obviously the College Park '89, which you guys just spoke of, was probably one of the best games that went down in history. We talk about that game a lot. And we talk about the 90 game, Loyola 21-9 at Rutgers. The good part about that game is everybody got to play. And we had, I think we had 7 or 8 All-Americans on that team, which is crazy. Those are fun moments. They bring up the fight before the game against Loyola in 90.
Yeah.
The big fight. So everybody likes talking about that with, Pat McCabe and Jim Egan and Kronberger on the other side. That was always a big thing for that game. Coach Desko yelling at us many times on the field, practice field, and watching him get worked up was always a discussion to this day. Coach Simmons, sometimes looking around, when we're playing on Coyne Field, he sometimes moseyed off and looked around and looked at trees and nature and forgot sometimes that we were practicing. So a lot of good memories and a lot of things we did as a team on and off the field that made us very successful.
One of the players you just alluded to is Pat McCabe. What was it like, Gary, what was it like to have Pat McCabe on your defense, and how hard was it to practice against him on a daily basis?
Pat was obviously Hall of Fame, a tremendous player, and another one of those competitors. To get to that level in the game, you gotta want to be you want to focus on excellence, and he always did. But just like anything, he would learn your tendencies and try and exploit them. And as an offensive player, we always try and do the same thing.
Yep.
And Pat was the master of I'll let you think you beat me, but I'm going to check you from behind.
The trail check.
And then trail check. That was his thing. And it was, you learned how to protect your stick once you dodged him, I tell you that. Otherwise, the ball would be on the ground. And once the ball was on the ground, it wasn't yours, it was his, because he had the 6-foot pole and he was a master of ground balls. So just tremendous player and a lot of fun to play with. We had great times in those days. A lot of people, Coach Simmons always used to say it, you think the games are great, you should come to the scrimmages and the practices if you really want to see something special. So it was a lot of fun. We were very competitive, and we all wanted to show our stuff every day in practice.
On the line with Gary Gait and Tom Marechek, 2 absolute superstars from Syracuse back in the day and now doing great things. Tommy, how do you intend to build a nationally significant program at IMG?
I would have to continue promoting our new philosophy and methodology here at IMG, such as playing fast and furious at all times, giving our players, the green light and to be creative and imaginative on the field. That's the way, obviously, Gary and Paul and I played growing up in Canada, and we brought that to college. I think every kid these days, all the kids that come to visit us want to play that way, and they see our practice, and they love what they see. Also, selecting that good balanced kid. We're going to have kids that are kind of the chipper, blue kids, tough kids from New York or certain areas in Pennsylvania, but you got to balance them out with the private school kids that are very skilled. So a good balance of kids to help embrace our culture here at IMG really helps as well.
Gary, you alluded to how you guys all played with such confidence. How are you going to help your Syracuse women embrace that confidence and play with it on a daily basis once you get back into the joy of coaching that team?
Well, that's something that when I took the job at Syracuse, we had never gone to a Final Four in the history of the program, and it's a mindset, and you have to, from the top down, believe that you're going to have the ability to compete and win a national championship. And then not only do you instill that in their minds, but then you have to practice and play like it. You have to practice like a champion. That means being dialed in every day. It means giving 100%, whether you don't feel great, you feel great. You got to do it for the team and what's best for the team. You got to elevate your teammates' level of play every day. And I think, that's kind of the on-field mentality. And then obviously I always continue to work on the mental side of the game and how to clear your mind and make sure that you're dialed in every day, every practice. So we always continue to build confidence through visualizations, meditation, affirmations, all of the typical sports psychology type stuff. I've always believed in that, always done it since I was a young kid. And I think that combination, gives us our best chance to compete for that national championship.
And you talk about competing for national championships. Gary Gait on the line with me with Tom Marechek. Tom's the director of lacrosse down at IMG. Gary, obviously the head women's coach at Syracuse University. Gary, on a fun note, how easy was it to play with your brother Paul, Tommy, John Zolberti, and those other great offensive players? Rodney Dumpson comes to mind. I mean, how fun was it to play with those guys back in the Syracuse days?
Well, it was extremely easy, and that came in a large part due to the direction of Coach Royce Jr., who saw what he had, and allowed us to do our thing. I think very different than probably the teams that played before us. They were probably a little more structured, but he changed his philosophy and the way he coached to fit the players that he had, and that made the experience, much like Tommy's talking about doing at IMG, is we had fun, we held people accountable, so you could go out there and throw your behind the backs, looks, try your shots, but you had to be good at it, and you had to practice on your own, and you had to master it, so that when you got out to practice, you truly saw some amazing plays that were never seen before in the game, and rarely seen in a game because there's so much on the line, but certainly plays and shots and moves that could be done in practice, to try and impress your teammates and to try and get better. Yeah. And it made it an amazing experience, and kind of changed the mindset of how a lot of people thought about the game.
Tommy, Gary just alluded to the behind the back stuff. Tommy, what was going through your mind when you're scoring all these goals behind the back? I mean, like your older brother, Billy the backhander. What's going through your mind when you're making those plays?
Nothing.
Yeah, tabula rasa.
No, it was, obviously it was something I preached and watched, emulated Kevin Alexander's, my brother, and that's something I just practice all the time in my driveway with a tennis ball, 4x4 goal, and it just became second nature to me. That was obviously my left hand because we never had to learn to use our opposite hand growing up playing box. Looking back now, I wish I did more because it would have helped me a little bit more. But anyways, no, it was really nothing. I got a funny, quick story about that behind the back. It's a shortened version. Shorter version.
No
so freshman year, I'm playing. We're on Coyne Field, just scrimmaging against ourselves. It was cold, wet, of course. February. I grabbed the ball. I was at center being attacked, and we cleared the ball. Palin cleared it to whomever, maybe Gary or Dumpson. They gave it to me. I'm streaking down the middle of the field. I think Gary was on the left side of me, streaking down the field with me. I threw it behind the back, and it was probably 20 feet over Gary's head out of bounds. All of a sudden, the ball goes the other way. The other goalie, or backup goalie, Lee Hine, I think, took it, and the ball's going the other way. So now I'm riding, and I just hear this, Marechek, are you kidding me? But I'm sure it was more than just kidding the word.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? So, anyways, I was a little nervous. I couldn't look at Coach Desko when he was yelling at me. Ball goes back the other way to Palin, makes a save or whatever, comes back. I'm at the same point at center, right in the middle, as an attackman waiting for the clear. I grab it again. I'm sprinting down the middle. All of a sudden, it was like it was an opening, and I just kept going, and nobody's around me, left or right. Nobody's picking me up. I decided to take a behind-the-back shot. It'd probably be 12, 13 yards out, crazy, on Matt Palin, actually, this time, I remember. And I stuck it right in the top corner. And I had the biggest relief, like literally sat there going, oh, my God, because this would have been make or break for me, and I would have been sitting on the bench for the rest of the year. And Jimmy Egan would have definitely come in and fill up. So, yeah, that was a moment where I just had to do it, and it worked. I was very lucky it worked.
Yeah. We're talking about the behind the back. Gary, quick question, and I didn't send this to you in the pre-show work, but the pass your brother Paul threw to Greg Burns in the national championship game was a 35-yard behind the back on the rope running pass. Is that the greatest pass in the history of lacrosse?
It's certainly, I think, the greatest pass on film we've had, and certainly under the pressure of a Final Four. I think, that's the amazing thing that, I always laugh. Tommy talked about the 90 championship, and there's a series of highlights from that championship, and there's more highlights in that one championship than most teams have in an entire year. And again, to be able to kind of pull that stuff off and have the confidence under the pressure of a national championship is amazing. And that pass, if you watch it on film, it looks very simple and casual.
It really does.
It's just like, which is, we throw those passes every day in practice, so it really was.
Yeah.
That's why I say I've seen better passes than that in practice, but that by far in a game and, under the pressure and playoff situation, national championship, certainly the greatest pass.
Tommy, we talked about Petro, we talked about Pat McCabe. Who are some other defensemen that stick out as guys that were just the absolute best and maybe they gave you a little bit of fits to have to go up against them? Who are some names that jump out?
Booker, I'll be honest with you. I never went into a game in college thinking this defenseman is, he's got tendencies here. And I just went in with my own game plan. So I really didn't have in my mind, although, you have your Petromalas and people like that, everybody knew. I would just say, every day is playing against my own defenseman. Like, I think, Pat McCabe was a big name, but we had guys that were really tough, close D, like a Mark Stouffer or a Jim McNamara or a Bobby Smith, guys that were there every day to make, definitely made myself better and to make every other player, offensive player, better. So the players I on my own team really, I never really went into a game thinking, oh, this defenseman's great. So I don't really know. Carolina did have some good defensemen in my era after Gary and Paul left.
Yep.
Graham Harden.
Sure.
Harden was a really good player, and Alex Martin was good.
Yep.
Then later on, then you got Dave Morrow from Princeton my last game actually, which I try to forget.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's I never really went into a game in college. A little different than box or in pro.
I'll make sure I'll remind Bubba Burlace that you left him off that list because he's on Monday.
You know what? We never played against Bubba.
Oh, he was ducking you. Yeah. Okay.
Maryland, Dick Adele ducked Simmons' schedule. No, we never played Maryland.
Okay.
In regular season.
Well, now it makes sense. Hey, Gary, let's get to another highlight that put lacrosse on the TV viewing map. The Air Gate. I know you've been asked this question before, but it's my chance now. How do you create that scenario, and how do you make it so unbelievable?
Again, going back to the way we practiced, it was, the history behind the move is I was trying to figure out, a way to score from behind, and my first initial thought and what I tried to, before was to drive directly from behind, right at the center of the goal from behind, and then dive and just take a diving shot from the front of the goal before you hit the ground. And that was my first couple attempts. And then mentally I just said, this would be a lot easier if I don't have to dive to the front. I can just dunk it in, the side or the top. And that's how that kind of came about. That was, the pure thinking of it. It's a way to score. Maybe the defensemen aren't pressing out behind. They're sitting at GLE. Here's a chance to try and score on them. And that brings us right to 1988, and we're playing Penn. They're playing a zone. So they are kind of sitting back a little bit, and they're playing sides. So by, being on the left side as a lefty attacker position, as soon as I went to cross over to the right, the other defenders dropped to pick up. So it kind of left that gap in the middle, a perfect opportunity, and we were struggling. We were having a tough day on the O end. And, down by a goal both times and took a chance. And luckily, the refs, watched and saw and couldn't find anything wrong with it and allowed them to be. And, the Air Gate was born. And certainly, probably the beginning of my life in lacrosse, was really born as far as notoriety and really taking, that lacrosse phase to the next level.
Gotta love hearing about the Air Gate. Gary, what advice do you have for athletes of any sport during this incredibly unique time in our lives with the virus sidelining everything? Spring football's now been canceled. What advice would you give athletes that are going to watch this?
I think it's pretty straightforward. The great athletes are going to do what they do, and that's get out there by themselves, get on the wall. They're going to improve their stick work. They're going to work on their dodging. They're going to get on the internet and find different plays, different moves that they can emulate and go and work on in their backyard. This is actually a great time for individual development. If you got a neighbor and you're allowed to, you can keep the 6-foot distance by throwing the ball with them. Perfect. Get out there, work on it, and get better. You should set goals during this time. I want to be able. I've already seen some challenges on the internet. Try this wall ball. Try and do it in this amount of time. Whatever it is, come up with ways to make yourself better. Just don't do the same things over and over again. Get creative. Learn new things. Learn new dodges. Learn new moves. Learn new shots.
Gary Gait, the head women's coach at Syracuse, joining us along with Tom Marechek, the director of lacrosse down at IMG Academy on the MedStar Coaches Hotline. Tommy, how is IMG going to come out stronger after all of this?
We're all going through a hard time, Booker, right now, as you could imagine. Every school in the nation are now doing this distance learning thing. I've been in meetings for the last 4 days about it, long, tenuous meetings, strenuous, but it's we just got to keep our head up, level head. Gary hit it right on the nose. The athletes, the proven athletes, will show their skills by doing things on their own, like Gary did, myself, Paul. I'm sure the pals on their own to get better, try different tricks, creativeness, get stronger. Lift on your own. I think we'll just keep reaching out to our recruits like anything, and especially because right now we're probably the number one post grad program in the nation. So I would think those senior high school kids who lost maybe some their season now are getting they need extra exposure and they're not committed yet for college. I think we can help them with college placement to come to ING and be a post grad player for us. We have 9 already on the boys and 4 on the girls. Just to get bigger, better, faster, and have a better chance to get recruited. So that's definitely an advantage at ING because of our PG program. We have the athletic personal development, obviously, which is mind and leadership and strength and conditioning and speed and agility coaches for lacrosse only. So that will get the kids more readily prepared for college. And so it's a tough time for everything, but I think we just have to use our assets here at ING, and that should speak for themselves. And once they come on campus, when this is all cleared, that's our selling point. Have a kid here to shadow for a day, shadow in classes with our players, practice with us, get the whole tour of the cafeteria and the performance center. That's our selling point. We're sorry that Gary's not here. Gary was actually supposed to fly in tomorrow or tonight, right, Gary, to play Louisville. We had that game on schedule. We were all excited for that game, but everything here is canceled. Now we are on spring break now until March 30th, but we just extended it 2 days ago till April 20th. Ooh. So so now we have to think outside the box with this distance learning, and these kids now will have to go on huddle and coach now, and all my coaches every day have to present things for hours at a time. So yeah, it's a tough time for everything. But guess what? The kids that really want it will do it, and the kids that won't, we'll see what happens come every Friday.
And I think we've all heard a number of people use the old adage, good players become great players when no one else is watching. And if you want to shine when the lights are bright, you better work when the lights are off. So that's 2 ways to say what you said. Gary, when you look at Syracuse, is this going to affect your roster because of the eligibility, or how do you anticipate handling that, or is it too early to tell?
Oh, man. We got some crazy times ahead. Let me just tell you that for the world of lacrosse. And the biggest thing is we're an equivalency sport. We're not a head count sport. So our scholarships on average are about 3 per year divided up amongst that particular class. And you just had, my understanding, 4 classes get an extra year of eligibility.
Yep.
So now we're talking about how do we resolve that issue. And I know today the ACC got together their athletic directors to have that discussion of how do we solve the issues. But, my wish is that, for the next 4 years, purely my opinion, I would love to see, the NCAA allow 3 additional scholarships so that we can now take 15 scholarships and spread them over the 5 years, rather than trying to take 12 scholarships and spread them over 5 different classes for the next 4 years. So there's going to be so many things that happen from kids that graduate and want to transfer. That are going to want to do that, to trying to keep your own graduated players at home, to players that will be coming in or thought they were going to get to start or play will now be, pushed back another year. So there's so many crazy things that may cause some players to transfer. They thought they were going to start next year, and now somebody comes back and they're number 2 on the depth chart again. So, at Syracuse, we're going to do what we can to keep our players. We're just waiting for, the NCAA, the ACC to tell us how we can do that. And we're going to come back competitive and ready to go. And, that's hopefully we've developed a lot of trust with our players, and they appreciate the experience and want to come back.
And it's interesting that you alluded to some freshmen or graduating seniors in the class of 2020 who thought they were going to jump in and start. Now they have people coming back. They may want to try and PG at IMG Academy of all places. So it's great to have Tommy on the line. Let's get to our Kelly and Associates vintage game. I asked you guys, other than the 89 game, the 89 men's lacrosse national championship game is widely considered the best lacrosse game ever played because of the competitiveness and the people who are still in the sport that were part of that game. So if we take that game off the board, Tommy, what is the best championship game in your mind that you have seen or played in or heard of?
Well, obviously, the next year for me, if we're talking NCAA, 90 at Rutgers, that was a special team. I don't think any team has been assembled like that since. Very, very good group. We were a family, outside on the field, outside the field. Non-college, non-NCAA. The biggest victory, I'm sure Gary might agree, maybe it would be the 1988 Minto Cup. It's a cup, one of the oldest amateur trophies in Canada that has eluded us, Swama Legion in Victoria for many years. We always made it very far, Game 7 and things like that. Ooh. Best in DC versus best in Ontario. And so for many years, Gary actually played in one more than I did, but I was there. 85 didn't win, 86 didn't win, 87 didn't win. And Gary and Paul's last year with the Pepper twins, another set of twins that played with Gary growing up, in 88, we finally had the Minto Cup. We hosted it at home in Victoria at the old Memorial Arena, and we won it. So it was a huge monkey off our back, and it was a lot of hard work and effort to win that out of my national championships.
And Gary, how about you? What do you think is the most remarkable title game you've seen or heard of or been a part of?
Well, I certainly agree with Tommy that 88 was amazing. You have a finite time to compete, under 21, very difficult to win in Canada. You got to have a special group of guys. For me, right along with that would be the World Championship of 2006 for a championship.
Oh, right.
For me,
Yeah.
Having my first tryout with the Canadian national team in 1984 and having to wait till 2006 to actually win one, and lots of things up and down from losing a 1-goal game in 98 to missing the 2002 World Championships due to the conflict with the MILL at the time, or the MLL, sorry,
right.
At the time. And to come back in 2006 as an older player and have the opportunity to compete one more time and win the first World Championship since 1978 Canadian soil was extremely exciting and kind of capped off a long lacrosse career for me.
You gotta love hearing those old stories, and that is the Kelly and Associates vintage game. Guys, I want to thank you so much for your time and expertise, and I know our viewers are going to get a lot out of this. So thank you very much. I love you guys, and I can't wait to have you back on the show later on this spring.
Thanks, Booker.
You got it, Gary.
Thanks.
You got
Thanks,
it, Tommy.
Booker.
You know it, man. Talk to you. What an absolute pleasure. Some of the memories that those guys have and some of the insights that they have and the way they saw the game. It's almost like talking with both Wayne Gretzky's of college lacrosse and pro lacrosse. I mean, those guys went on to unbelievable and unprecedented professional indoor and outdoor careers at the professional and post-collegiate level, even playing for Team Toyota back in 93, 94, 95. Tommy and I were lucky enough to coach together at McDonough School way, way, way back in the day. And I've always considered him a dear friend. He and my dad had a phenomenal relationship. My dad was lucky enough to be out in Vail when both Gates and Tommy and a bunch of other all-stars, my man Billy Miller, my brother George, a bunch of other absolute, Chris Flynn, Scott Gabrielson, just absolute stars from the Philadelphia area and beyond. Timmy Goldstein, one of those guys who played on those MAB Paints squads out in Vail. So a phenomenal chance to be upon the MedStar Coaches Hotline and talk with Gary Gait and Tommy Marechek, and of course the Kelly & Associates Vintage Game. I'm surprised neither one brought up the 2009 Syracuse-Cornell overtime national championship for the Cuse, but hey, every man's got to sail his own ship. We are going to take a quick commercial break, and on the other side, I'm going to have the opportunity to catch up with Michael Sowers from Princeton, as well as Grant Ament, and they won't be on at the same time. So it'll be a segment with Michael Sowers, and then it's going to be a segment with Grant Ament. Now, ironically, both Philadelphia products, both seniors this year. So their senior years kind of went sideways. And I think that seniors and freshmen are the one who are going to be able to look back, 100 years from now and say, like, that was the weirdest freshman year that you could ever imagine. Sophomores and juniors, you get a chance to recycle it. You've already done a freshman year, so you got that. So seniors in college and high school and freshmen in college and high school, your years got so thrown aside. Seniors in high school, no prom. Your graduations are up in the air. I know schools have already postponed commencement exercises so that you won't even have that ceremony. And, things are certainly still trending on the downside of this, incredibly awful disease. But let's stick together. Tell the people you love that you love them. Reach out to somebody who you think might not be of good health, whether it's physical or mental. When you're sequestered and alone, it can be a little bit taxing. The quarantine that is in front of us right now is going to put us in a unique position to foster and deepen our relationships with one another. Again, we are going to take a quick break, commercial break, and we'll come back on the flip-flop, as my man Jack Black likes to say in School of Rock. But we are going to step away momentarily. Until then, we'll be right back.
Kelly & Associates Insurance Group and Kelly Payroll helps employers and employees save time, money, and hassle in navigating the intricacies of insurance, benefits, payroll, and workforce challenges. Kelly & Associates Insurance Group and Kelly Payroll is pleased to support CSE TV and the Game of the Week. Visit kellyway.com to put their people, technology, and services to work for you.
We have come a long way. All the amazing advancements in medicine. And while science has become better at treating people, we can't ever forget the importance of how we simply treat people. At MedStar Health, we believe it doesn't take a brain surgeon to get the best way to talk to a doctor isn't always in person. And that inside every human body lives a human being. The best of our minds, the best of our hearts. MedStar Health. It's how we treat people.
Yeah, we've come this far, but can we finish what we started? Do we have it in us? Can we get back at it and keep grinding? Because the second we think we've given everything, we're gonna give more. Because this is our moment, and we are made for this. We are made for this.
Whatever you're made for, Gatorade is made to fuel it.
Yeah, we've come this far, but can we finish what we started? Do we have it in us? Can we get back at it and keep grinding? Because the second we think we've given everything, we're gonna give more. Because this is our moment, and we are. Made for this. We are made for this.
Whatever you're made for, Gatorade is made to fuel it.
Kelly and Associates Insurance Group and Kelly Payroll helps employers and employees save time, money, and hassle in navigating the intricacies of insurance, benefits, payroll, and workforce challenges. Kelly and Associates Insurance Group and Kelly Payroll is pleased to support CSE TV and the Game of the Week. Visit kellyway.com to put their people, technology, and services to work for you.
We have come a long way. All the amazing advancements in medicine. And while science has become better at treating people, we can't ever forget the importance of how we simply treat people. At MedStar Health, we believe it doesn't take a brain surgeon to get the best way to talk to a doctor isn't always in person, and that inside every human body lives a human being. The best of our minds, the best of our hearts. MedStar Health. It's how we treat people.
You're more than your successes. You're more than your failures.
You nasty.
You're the work. You want that smoke? Give him that fire.
The Fellowship of Christian Athletes engages their coaches and athletes to grow their faith through sport. Make sure you investigate the amazing camp at Lebanon Valley College this July. The FCA has camps, clinics, huddles, teams. Learn more about the Fellowship of Christian Athletes by going to fcalax.com.
Yeah, we've come this far, but can we finish what we started?
Back for another segment of the Booker Corrigan Show. We're going to have a segment called the Warrior Player to Player, where they give some advice. We're going to do the FCA tourney projections, which is a little speculation, and I'm going to have Michael Sowers give me where he thought his team might have been seeded, and then we're going to talk about who would be a real tough out, who's a bear to absolutely play against But Michael Sowers from Princeton, 2019, 37 goals and 53 assists. Speaks volumes to what he was able to accomplish as being an unselfish teammate. And already this season, 16 goals, 31 assists. Come on, man. That's like 5 or 6 games. 5, as a matter of fact. It's 5. I was saying 5 or 6 just to try and soften the blow to the teams he'd played against. But the guy was lighting up the league. 2018, 56 assists. Enough about me. This isn't about me. This is about me making Mike Sowers shine. Let's bring him on. I mean, the guy's got so much funk in his bag, he could be in Parliament Funkadelics.
Booker.
Mike Sowers, what a pleasure to have you live on the air on the Booker Corrigan Show. How are you doing? What's your state right now?
Oh, I'm doing good. It's a weird time. It's certainly weird to be home in my house right now, but yeah, it's just bizarre.
It's definitely a weird time. Ivy League, you're at Princeton, and the Ivy League was one of the first schools or organizations and conferences to pull the plug. How did it hit you emotionally when the Ivy League said, that's it, it's over?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was pretty crazy. When we first heard, we were devastated, and I think like some people were honestly in shock. But as time progressed, really throughout the day, we realized how serious the situation was, and also just like how much bigger the situation was than just our season. Sports in general affected people around the world. It was certainly much bigger than our season.
And one of the things I do a lot of that Under Armour All-American Underclass tryouts, and I tell people all the time that lacrosse is a tremendous vehicle to go be successful in something else. So to hear you say that, you understand it was lacrosse and you guys were in a really, really good place. Princeton lacrosse was poised to make a deep run. What can you possibly do to make up the moments that you will now miss?
To be honest, like I think it's just be fortunate about the moments that we did have.
Wow.
I think that we, as much as it would have been cool to, be able to play out this season, and hopefully play late into May.
Yep.
The reality is that, we were extremely fortunate to have, the 6-7 months that we had together. I've said it that I don't think that our team would have changed one thing that we did together. It sounds cliche, but we enjoyed every minute that we had, and we tried to make the most out of every minute. I think that now more than ever, looking back on that, that's something that we're proud to say that we truly did enjoy the time that we had together.
It's interesting. It reminds me of a wise man once said, "You only get one shot at today." And it sounds like Princeton lacrosse certainly made the most of that. We have a segment called the Warrior Player to Player. What advice do you have for high school and college players right now?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'll take it a different route than I think most people would give an answer, and my advice would just be to have fun with the game, to enjoy the game. I think that at the most fundamental, to be great at anything, to enjoy to work at anything, you have to love what you're doing. And the only way to get better is if you truly love it, because otherwise, the reality is like we spend so much time playing the game at the college level that, sometimes it definitely feels like a job. And if you don't love what you're doing and love the guys that you're doing it with, it's going to be really hard to get better. So I think that, first and foremost, just loving what you do, loving the game is most important.
Some great advice from our guest, Michael Sowers, in our Warrior Player to Player segment. Absolutely the most mature, outside-the-box thinking. I guess you Princeton guys really are fairly cerebral. It is a great opportunity for me to now tell you that I do have a history as a University of Pennsylvania ice hockey player. It was a club team. I went to Roanoke College, graduated high school with a 2.1. I think Penn might shut this whole show down if they ever hear me say that again. But I did, in fact, when I was in high school, I had a friend who, played hockey at Penn. He was like, Book, you got to come up and play with this. It's phenomenal. So I did, in fact, and don't, this is just between you and I. Don't share that with a lot of people, but I did wear a Penn jersey. And I don't think they're too psyched about the GPA that I brought with me. Now, on to more serious notes, Michael, and I do appreciate the time. What are you going to do now to improve your game?
So for me, I think that, we're in a weird spot right now. I think everybody, all college lacrosse players are, so used to the routine of, you play season finishes in April, hopefully in May, later in May, and then you take a couple weeks off and, you hit the ground running in June. I think that ending this early in March gives us, a unique opportunity to really take advantage of the time that we have and to grow as players and to find weaknesses in our game, in my game specifically. And so for me, one of the first calls that I'll be making is to Coach Mitchell, our offensive coordinator, and just get his thoughts on what, I need to improve on, how I can help our offense moving forward, what he thinks would help me grow. So, my first step is going to be to identify those weaknesses. I think I know what they are, like some of them, like turning the corner with my left hand, shooting the ball from the outside, stuff that I can always get better at. And then it's really just going to be the consistent effort of, hammering it out every single day and taking advantage of the time that we have.
Great advice from my man, Michael Sowers. Now let's talk about some of your teammates. Who on your squad at Princeton was emerging as someone who was really making a step towards the next level and was going to be a contributor for that run you guys are poised to make in May?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question as well. And, I think that, one of the reasons that we had the early success that we did is because, we had so many people step up to the plate. And just to name a few, our midfield of Connor McCarthy, Alex Rodaro, Alex Slusher, defensive mids and Bo Pedersen, Sammy English, Luke Anderson, those type of guys were guys that, truly brought us to the next level. And those are just to name a couple. We had so many top to bottom on our roster that, upped their game. And it's unfortunate because, on Saturdays, like, we're the only one, there's only a certain amount of people that get to show the work they put in. But for us, when you have that top-down buy-in and everybody's getting better, it just kind of moves the needle in practice, moves the competitive level in practice. And I think that helps elevate everybody's game.
That is fantastic. I know it might be a little early, but have you considered what next year might look like for Mike Sowers?
To be honest, I haven't too much.
Okay.
Obviously the dream would be to be able to wear a Princeton uniform again, but at this point we're kind of still waiting for all the information to come out regarding next steps, both from the NCAA and from the Ivy League. And then, I'll discuss with my family and kind of move forward from there.
Mike, over 100 career assists. What is it about you that helps you find players like that, and who moves well without the ball and helps you find them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I've been fortunate enough to grow up around the game, for a long time, and to be able to understand defenses and understand, if they slide from here, this guy's going to be open. But I think at the same time, I think throughout my career, but particularly at Princeton, I've been the beneficiary of some, unbelievable off-ball finishers. And I think more than just finishers, but like people that understand the spacing off-ball. One in particular, two in particular being Gavin McBride, my freshman year, and then Joe Robertson, who's my roommate, one of my best friends on campus. And like people I think kind of don't appreciate Phil enough for what he does. But in my opinion, the way that he moves off ball is what flows our offense. And I think that, that's just an undervalued skill of understanding the open spots off ball and how to move. And that's helped me a ton as a player.
Michael, you mentioned Gavin McBride, and I know that you only got to play a couple years with him. Did you ever see him off the field wearing a Sidney Moncrief jersey?
I don't think so, but I could ask him about it.
Please, well, I will text him. I wish I could have him join this call. One of my favorite kids. I get to broadcast some Haverford games, which is where Gavin played, and I used to parallel his game to the great Sidney Moncrief, who played basketball at Arkansas. For those of you who don't know, what sport do you think is the best crossover sport for lacrosse players if they want to be a real multi-sport athlete?
To be honest, I think they're all pretty transferable.
Nice.
I think that basketball certainly has, you can draw many skills from that. I played football. I love doing that. But I really just think that any sport, you can draw so much from it. And also I think that it just kind of breeds competitiveness and that kind of full athlete that you don't get just from specializing in lacrosse.
Have you ever watched the highlights or games by Mikey Powell, the old Syracuse player?
Oh, of course. Those are some of my favorite videos on YouTube.
Yeah. Do you wish that I was narrating and calling the play-by-play for those?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it'd be a lot more exciting.
Yeah. On a more serious note, how crushing was it for you when you heard the news that the NCAA was canceling the entire tournament?
Like I said, it was really devastating. It was certainly kind of blindsided us, and something that nobody could foresee coming. But like I said, at the same time, you take a step back and you realize how fortunate we are, just to be able to have the time that we did with the guys, and to be able to just play the game in general at a high level. It makes you appreciate the time that you do have, and just how fun the game truly is, and how awesome it is just to be in a locker room every single day.
What's it like for Mike Sowers to not have lacrosse on a spring afternoon?
To be honest, I'm pretty lost right now. I don't know what to do. I'm somewhere in between. I gotta write my senior thesis, which is pretty brutal. So I'm doing that right now, and then watching a couple Netflix shows, Showtime, Homeland. But other than that, pretty lost, to be honest with you.
Let me know if you need help with that senior thesis for Princeton University. I'm sure I could steer you in the right direction to someone who could help you.
Yeah, I will.
Now, let's get into a hypothetical, which I'm not a huge hypothetical guy, but I do think there is some merit in this. It's the FCA tourney projections. Where do you think Princeton was looking to get seeded is the first part of the question. And then the second part is, which of the opponents that you may have faced do you think would have been an absolute bear to have to play against?
I think that I think for us, our goal has always been we just want to get in that tournament.
Okay.
For us, it's we obviously it'd be awesome to be the number one seed to win the Ivy League. That's a goal for us, and it's always been a goal for us. But we were never too worried about that. We just wanted to get in, and we knew that once we got in, our process would pay off, and we would be confident moving forward. With that said, there were some unbelievable teams out there. We played Virginia earlier in the year down there, and I think we kind of caught them off guard at that point. And they were young, but they were just fantastic, well-coached team that I think if we played them again, I think it would be a dogfight. And then we hadn't played the likes of Penn, the likes of Yale,
right.
Cornell, all great teams where we were fortunate enough to go 5-0 early in the season, but we still had many big tests that we were looking forward to later down the line. So I think that really any of those teams, they're also seasoned come May that they're primed to make a run.
Love hearing the great advice from Michael Sowers from Princeton University. And one of the things that stuck out with me is anytime I asked you about those cancellations, you immediately looked back and said you were thankful for all that you got to have with that group. On a side note, and this is something that I'm trying to do, I was scheduled to do games for ESPN. I was going to do Penn State against Hopkins. And rather than, that game was going to be April 11th, rather than sit around and sulk on April 11th and say I should be on, doing a game, I'm doing a clothing drive for the Helping Up mission, and I'm going to collect all kinds of clothes. I know that we're too far apart for me to get clothes from you, but I hope that people who watch this will, get to that level of acceptance in their grieving of lacrosse being gone and say, okay, let's make it a positive. Michael, you have any activities planned where you're going to donate some time or donate some way to help others? And I saw that clip on Twitter that you did with Kark about the footwork. Are you going to continue those?
Any opportunity that I have to do something like that, I would love to. And I actually, right now, we're fortunate enough to join with the Headstrong Foundation in presenting the Last Shift 2020, which is going to be a virtual 5K for student athletes across the country to kind of participate in what would be the last shift. And that raises money for high risk COVID-19 people. Good. And so that's kind of, any opportunity at this point with how much free time that I have and we have, I love to participate in that stuff.
There's nothing wrong with helping others. There's nothing ever wrong with having a positive mindset. Michael, I can't thank you enough for the time, and hopefully we will be together soon. But keep being great, and we will be in touch. Thank you, my man.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Booker. I appreciate it.
Yep, you got it. Michael Sowers, what a great young man. And I was taken back by every time I tried to get him to talk about, whoa, we lost our season. We were doing so well. We were right there, in the race to win the Ivy League. And he looked back and said, we were happy for the time we had. Now we got Grant Ament next on the show. Quick commercial break, and we'll be back with Penn State's unbelievable superstar, also a Philadelphia native. Gotta love that. We'll be right back after this.
The Fellowship of Christian Athletes engages their coaches and athletes to grow their faith through sport. Make sure you investigate the amazing camp at Lebanon Valley College this July. The FCA has camps, clinics, huddles, teams. Learn more about the Fellowship of Christian Athletes by going to fcalax.com.
Yeah, we've come this far, but can we finish what we started? Do we have it in us? Can we get back at it and keep grinding? Because the second we think we've given everything, we're gonna give more. Because this is our moment, and we are. We are made for this.
Whatever you're made for, Gatorade is made to fuel it.
Kelly and Associates Insurance Group and Kelly Payroll helps employers and employees save time, money, and hassle in navigating the intricacies of insurance, benefits, payroll, and workforce challenges. Kelly and Associates Insurance Group and Kelly Payroll is pleased to support CSE TV and the Game of the Week. Visit kellyway.com to put their people, technology, and services to work for you.
We have come a long way. All the amazing advancements in medicine. And while science has become better at treating people, we can't ever forget the importance of how we simply treat people. At MedStar Health, we believe it doesn't take a brain surgeon to get the best way to talk to a doctor isn't always in person, and that inside every human body lives a human being. The best of our minds, the best of our hearts. MedStar Health. It's how we treat people.
You're more than your successes. You're more than your failures.
You nasty.
You're the work. You want that smoke? Give him that fire.
Hey now, and welcome back. Thanks for sticking around. I got a treat for you. Reward you for your endurance. This is the Booker Corrigan Show on YouTube, brought to you by the Under Armour All-American Underclass Tryout. Got a great opportunity to catch up with Grant Ament from Penn State. And I will tell you this. Last season, 2019, Grant Ament and I combined for 30 goals and 96 assists. He had all of them. I had none. But he happens to be from Philadelphia, and he's willing to take some time out of his day. So we're going to bring him on the line. And I'm going to use that as my opening line with him. See if he can. Let's make sure we get him on speaker. Hi, Grant. How are you? Welcome to the Booker Corrigan Show live on YouTube, brought to you by the Under Armour Underclass All-American Tryout. Grant, I just introduced you by saying that in 2019, you and I combined for 30 goals and 96 assists, and you had all of them. Is that a true statement?
I think so. I don't know if you're playing in any adult leagues. So.
No, I'm a hockey guy. I just love lacrosse for what it is. Let's talk immediately about the current situation. Penn State coming off a run to championship weekend. And how were you emotionally when you heard the news about the NCAA canceling the tournament?
Yeah, it was a pretty rough announcement. We were actually on the bus home. We played Furman on last Tuesday. And we were driving home from South Carolina on Thursday. We had our last practice that morning. And it was just after we got our lunch. And, the NCAA posted that they had canceled all spring championships. And the bus went silent pretty quickly. In my opinion, it was inevitable based off of the Ivy League's decision. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of just a matter of time, but, obviously, tears and, everybody just so emotional about it, especially, the seniors who, we've worked so hard to get to our senior season. And regardless of what happens with eligibility or anything, it's just always not going to be the same.
Right.
So, it was definitely an upsetting moment. And, Coach Tambroni, spoke to the seniors separately during while we were at a rest stop, and a lot of emotion out of him. Haven't really seen him like that in a very long time. So it was just a kind of a foggy moment. Kind of still in a fog. It kind of still hasn't set in. I don't really quite know what to do with myself right now.
Yeah.
So
and we're going to get to that in a minute. But what can you possibly do to make up the moments that you'll miss?
Yeah, I constantly think. I was talking with two of my roommates, Brandon Stern and Kevin Hill, who are both fifth years.
We were so bright.
Just walking across University Drive on game days, specifically Sunday night games. We were supposed to play Maryland 2 weeks from, no, not even. We're a week and a half away, basically, from when we were supposed to play Maryland, and that's always a fun game. Just those types of things. Not necessarily scoring goals or assists or anything. It's just more, it's very hard to replicate that feeling that you get on a game day at home, especially playing in the new Panzer Stadium. Mm-hmm. Just knowing that, we're not going to have that opportunity for the rest of the spring is heartbreaking. But, we're just trying to put one foot in front of the other until we get the opportunity to do anything else.
In a segment that we like to call the Warrior Player to Player, what advice do you have for high school players right now who are in effectively the same situation?
Yeah, my biggest thing, I took a few days off after to just kind of let it sink in. But, this week I've kind of been doing body weight workouts, shooting in my backyard at local parks, trying to do anything because at the same time, you never know who's working harder than you. And you can, just because you aren't necessarily suiting up on a game day doesn't mean that you can't continue to sharpen your craft. It's essentially as if we're in an off season again. and you just got to keep pushing forward and keep trying to get better, because you never know when the whistle is going to be blown. So, there's still plenty of ways to get better, and just, be active and keep a positive mindset. I think, with me, with shooting and, getting back out on the field, it just brings such a positive mindset to me, just because I have such a personal connection with the game. It just clears my head. And I think that, the majority of people that play the sport would get the same thing out of it.
Who on your team at Penn State was really emerging as someone that was taking their game to the next level? We're on the line right now with Grant Ament from Penn State. Who was someone who was really bursting onto the scene that you think are a couple guys that are worth mentioning that were ready to have a great 2020?
TJ Malone is definitely first one that comes to mind, and Jack Trainer is the second. Both are Philly guys. TJ went to Haverford. Jack went to Malvern. Both of them were sophomores. They're sophomores, and freshman year, they had peaks and valleys. Moments where you saw glimpses of brilliance, and they just started to play confidently and play the way that I see in practice. I knew they were capable of. It's a little bit different when you got somebody else against you. Specifically, I mean, Jack had 4 goals against UPenn in a very tight game.
Yeah.
TJ has played well in these past few games, and I look at those guys as kind of more little brothers than anything, and just to see them playing so confidently, it's a shame that we aren't going to see what they can do, because I really enjoyed just watching them, because they're very hardworking kids, and they want to be as good as anybody, and the ball was kind of starting to roll their way. And I have no doubt that it's going to continue to roll their way in the future, and they'll be in similar positions that I've been in, and I think there's no reason why those two can't be Tewaaraton finalists in the future.
Yeah, and you got to love the fact that we're on with Grant Ament, who was in fact poised to be in the Tewaaraton finalist group and was on the watch list his whole career basically at Penn State. What's next? What does next year look like for Grant Ament?
I don't really know at this time.
Okay.
Obviously, we gotta wait until the NCAA kind of comes out with. They said they'd grant an extra year of eligibility, but there's a lot of stuff that I think needs to be ironed out. They kind of said that, but there are a lot more holes that need to be patched up before I can make a decision. I'm a 5th year, so I've declared for graduation as has everybody else. So. I got to weigh it out with my family and kind of decide from there. But at this point in time, I'm just kind of trying to just still continue to get better, because regardless of what happens, I still love the sport, and still love the process of just getting better and being as good as I possibly can.
You talk about being as good as you possibly can. Explain for us what it's like to play with Mac O'Keefe and the relationship you guys have on the outside and on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, I play with the best scorer to ever play college lacrosse, so that is I'll go to bat with anybody who wants to argue differently, just because I see it on the day-to-day basis. From an on-field perspective, it's just so impressive how quickly he can release the ball. From anywhere from 2 yards out to 17 yards out, and he does it with such ease, and it just makes me look a lot better than I actually am in some of those instances, and it's provided also, like with me, he's got creativity to his game, so I want to try new things. And off the field, he's a great friend, and him and my relationship has definitely developed more this year. Me being a 5th year and kind of not necessarily having all my classmates that I came in with, him and I have been able to kind of grow closer, and I know he's got my back with just about anything. I went through a little injury this past fall, and he was one of the first guys that called and was just checking in on me and was just trying to make sure that I was doing all right. And that friendship that I know will last way longer than us putting on the Penn State jersey.
And it's great to know Mac O'Keefe also. And I got bad news when I say this sentence to you, Grant. I got bad news for you. Mac O'Keefe can score those big-time goals from the outside, and he's also capable of the nifty little finish on the inside. And didn't I tell you there was going to be a race to nifty?
Yeah, you won the race.
Yeah, how do you not? I gave you 8.5 minutes, brother. Come on, brother. Brothers hug.
I gotta be better than that.
Yeah,
I gotta be better.
You gotta up your game. Next time I want you to answer the phone and say, "This is Nifty Grant Ament. How can I help?"
All right, I'll keep that in mind.
What is it like for Grant Ament to have an afternoon off in the spring?
I'm pretty lost right now. I mean,
Yeah.
I've cleaned my closet. I've unpacked my clothes. I've cleaned all my shoes. Gone and worked out. Like I've done just about everything. So there's really not a whole lot to do. I mean, I'm later this afternoon. I'll probably go to a park, bring my net, and go shoot for a while. And I mean, other than that, there's not a whole lot to do. I have literally one class at Penn State right now, so the whole online schooling thing has really just allowed me to basically even be less in school if that was even possible. So I really have nothing to do but just go out, have a good time, and go to a park.
But you can't even really go out and have a good time because we can't get together in groups. So
yeah. So I mean,
go out and have a good time with your stick and your dog.
Yeah, that's the best time for me. So that's basically all that I've been doing. Obviously, FaceTiming friends and seeing what everybody else is doing, but it seems to be universal across the board that everybody's kind of just trying to figure out what to do. Normally in these situations, I would go to a gym, but can't really do that.
Yeah.
So just kind of trying to stay as busy as I possibly can and try to just organize everything in my life. And, hopefully this thing ends sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
We can kind of get back to reality. But, at this point in time, we're just plugging and chugging and hoping it ends.
Back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Now you got your man Gavin McBride. You can definitely FaceTime him later today and tell him you lost the race to Nifty because he's a big fan. We have a segment we call the FCA Tourney Projections. And I ask you, and I know that this is looking into a crystal ball that none of us had the answers to, but it's a two-part question. Where do you think Penn State may have been seeded, and who do you think would have been the absolute toughest opponent or opponents that you would have had to go through in order to get to Memorial Day competition?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the biggest bummers because we'd lost two close games to two phenomenal teams in Yale and Cornell. And, I think that was actually what we needed. I do think there was a sense of overconfidence at times, and I think that kind of brought us back down to earth. So we were kind of primed to take that next step and be great. So with that being said, I was anticipating probably a 3 or a 4 seed in the playoffs. Definite home game, first round. And then as for teams that I think that I saw playing particularly well at that moment, Syracuse looked phenomenal. I mean, their midfield was incredibly dangerous, just so much speed at that midfield. And then Yale is just a team that's just never going to go away because of the guy that they have at the face-off X. He seems to keep them in games or pull them away in games. And, they have great pieces on both offensive and defensive sides of the ball. But, he really, TD creates a lot for them. And obviously, we've struggled losing 3 games to them. And 3 out of the 4 games that we've lost in the past 2 years have been to them. So, those two teams definitely stand out to me in terms of that. But I think one thing that, Penn State lacrosse specifically has come a long way with is not necessarily fearing any opponent that we had. I think when I was a freshman, when we went into those big games, the Maryland games, the Hopkins games, there was some sense of fear. But now, we felt like we were the aggressor, and that's part of the bummer of it all. Is, it's what could have been, but at the same time, I'm on a team, one team out of probably 20 that could be saying the exact same thing. So, who knows what would have happened? But you can only think positive thoughts to keep yourself going.
The FCA 20 projections, and I tell you, Grant, my heart breaks because I got to broadcast one of your games when you were at Haverford School, and it was an absolute blast. And I had a great ESPN schedule set up for this coming spring. And on April 11th, I was going to be in the booth for the Hopkins-Penn State game. And this is, I want to lead you down a path here because this is what I want to see what you're doing. But when I heard that the season was canceled, I wasn't going to be doing those games. I was going to do Hopkins, Maryland. I was kind of heartbroken. I was in the anger stage. And when I got to the acceptance stage of my grief, I decided on April 11th, I'm not going to sit around and sulk and be bummed out that I'm not doing Hopkins Penn State. I am going to organize and create a clothing drive for a charitable group here in Baltimore called the Helping Up Mission. I know that you and I don't live close enough where you can help me with that, but I want people who are watching to know that that's something I'm doing. Is there a way, I just had Michael Sowers on. He talked about the Headstrong Foundation.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you're going to dedicate some time and help some people, and how would you like to promote that?
Yeah, so Mike and I actually partnered together with the Headstrong
Love it.
Last shift. So Pat Galuri called me literally Friday. So obviously the news broke on Thursday. Pat called me on Friday morning at like 8 a.m.
Love Pat.
And he's a phenomenal guy. And he just said, I have this idea. I don't know if it's going to have any traction, but I just wanted to pitch it to you, and I wanted to get you and Mike, because you're two Philly guys, in on this. We both said 100%, yeah, we're in, let's do it. So that's what we're doing. That's on April 6th. It's a virtual 5K. So, we're spreading it via social media right now. Mm-hmm. And then on April 6th, just, go out, run, 3-point run, jog, bike,
walk.
Do whatever, 3.1 miles, walk if you want. And, who knows, I might take the dog for a nice 3.1 mile walk and, just report it and just, we're trying to gain traction because, at this point in time, there's not a whole lot to do. And, specifically with Headstrong, cancer patients with the coronavirus, they're the ones that are most vulnerable. So it's definitely a cool way to tie it in. And then at the end of the day, it was kind of just to allow closure for the 2020 lacrosse season as a collective lacrosse community, which I think could be pretty powerful, and I bought right into it. So credit to Pat Gallery for coming up with it, but he called Mike and I, and we're all in on it. So I'm excited for that to see what kind of traction it can gain.
And Pat's a fantastic guy, and of course Headstrong. There's great organizations, and then there's organizations that are so much greater, and I'm a full believer in Headstrong. So thank you. Grant, I wish you nothing but the best. I appreciate your time. Have a blessed weekend, and let's get you back on later in the spring, and we can talk more about the Headstrong stuff and what we think might have also happened. But love having you on.
All right. Thanks, Booker. Thanks so much.
You got it. Grant Amon. I do feel bad that he lost the race to Nifty. But on a far more important note, the guy's dedicating his time to Headstrong. He's doing stuff. He and Mikey Sowers are good buddies. Everything's going to fall into place. For those of you out there who are struggling with your loneliness, make sure you reach out to a friend. It's going to be a tough stretch, but we're going to make it. We're going to come out stronger. The United States always does. Until next week, we got some great guests lined up. I'm going to keep those under wraps right now, but we got some great guests lined up for next week. Until then, I'm Booker Corrigan reminding you, you only get one shot at today.